Hi, I'm Catherine Miller. Welcome to the first of our Stock Journal panel discussions on key sectors and issues in agriculture and South Australia. Today we'll be focusing on the beef industry, one of the star performers of the ag sector in the past couple of years. I'd like to welcome our three panellists, Steve Rudetsky, Penny Schulz and Bruce Cameron. First of all, I'll just get the three of you to just run through a little bit about your background in the industry and what you do in the beef industry. So we might start with Bruce.
Bruce Cameron. I'm the Northern Cattle Coordinator for the pastoral regions in South Australia up through to Alice Springs and help assisting the Elders branch staff in marketing cattle right through to the southeast and to various feedlot and specialist markets in South Australia.
Brilliant, yeah, excellent. And to Penny?
Hi, I'm Penny Schulz and I'm a beef and sheep producer from the upper southeast in South Australia, and I also sit on the Livestock SA board, which is the advocacy board, and the SA Cattle Advisory Group.
Yeah, excellent. And to Steve?
Yeah, Catherine, morning. I am the State Agri-Manager for SANT. Also cover a bit of the Gascoyne, Pilbara, Kimberleys and the Western Districts of New South Wales as well. So covering a lot of different...
Fair bit of cattle country.
Fair bit of cattle country and a lot of different cattle countries.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, excellent. Great. Well, we've obviously got a wealth of information, so I'm really looking forward to this. I guess the first question, we've seen the Eastern Young Cattle Indicator fall below 600 cents for the first time in sort of more than a year recently. MLA's forecasting in their projections that we might see the EYCI at sort of mid 500 cents in sort of mid next year. Where do you sort of see, I suppose, beef prices heading? This is probably the $1 million question, but beef prices heading in the next 6 months. We might start with Steve. You can fire away.
Thank you. I guess from our perspective, we're relatively supportive of the current prices, and yeah, there's going to be a bit of volatility in the market, but our view is that the supply piece is playing a big part in at the moment, so there may be some slight movement downwards, but generally speaking, fairly positive and not seeing probably to the extent that you're suggesting.
And Penny, where do you sort of...
Yeah, we have seen that recent correction from those extreme highs, but I'm still relatively positive, and things always a bit volatile depending on the seasonal conditions and the Aussie dollar and those sort of things, but I think a new benchmark, a new baseline has been put into that price. And I think I'm definitely positive, and seems most producers seem relatively positive going forward.
Yeah, great. And Bruce, where do you...
I think Penny stole a few of the comments there with the Australian dollar and everything. Our seasonal conditions have worsened on the eastern states, which has caused the job to drop a bit. But I think the good thing is good quality cattle and targeted Pacific market are still making good to fair rates. So, and the processing side will see a bit of a correction there. As Steve mentioned, it went to an extreme rates last year, and we're seeing that correction from very, very high, but still going to be healthy compared to what it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, we have seen that volatility in the market, as you said. I mean, how do you think that beef producers and can position themselves to be able to still do well in this pretty volatile market that we've got at the moment? I mean, we might start with Bruce, if you...
I think the key for beef producers is, target a Pacific market. Don't jump around the shop, whether you're a supplier of young store stock or supplying a heavy feeder steer, and perhaps have a bit of an edge on your competitors by having certain accreditations to suit certain markets and having well-bred stock, and you'll still get your fair rate as compared to somebody who's just lobbing stock willy-nilly onto the market.
And selling it more as a commodity.
As a commodity. So. And we're seeing a lot of that now with EU accreditation, PCAS and various types to target Pacific markets.
Yeah. Penny, do you sort of agree? Do you think that's really important, I suppose?
Oh, absolutely. And biosecurity status as well. It's quite a hot topic at the moment. But also I think it depends if you're a breeder or if you're a trader as to how I suppose safe you are from those volatile markets. So breeders, if they're not wanting to increase their herds too much, have got a bit of a something to back them up because they've always got cattle on the go. Whereas traders have got to really play the market and do their figures and crunch the numbers before they take those risks.
And do you think that people are being a bit more cautious about that, I suppose? trading?
Yeah, I think they are, but at the end of the day, we've got a number of traders in our books, and one thing that makes the difference between the good traders, the average traders, and those who might make a profit, might make a loss, is the consistency of which they can produce to a market. And Bruce is right, you actually have to know what you're producing and what you're producing to. But the offtake agreement is where people make their money.
Yeah.
And having the right offtake agreements with the right people, being able to provide a consistent product. And I always say to our, we've got a lot of people who try and sell cattle, and we've got other people who don't need to sell the cattle because people want to buy the cattle.
Yeah.
And if you can move from being a seller to having a lot of people knocking on your door wanting to buy, that's where you win.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think there's some great comments there. I suppose we've seen, as you've all mentioned, some pretty great times in the beef industry in the last couple of years. What have you sort of seen that the flow-on effects have been, and where have people been investing their money, I suppose, in the beef industry in those good times? Might start, Penny, do you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, well, there's always those flow-on effects to your local businesses, rural merchandise, stock agency firms, also benefiting from these higher prices, but even community groups. I know local car dealerships, been a few new farm utes and family cars rolling out the doors there because people have finally got that security in their bank balances to trade up to, invest in something new in their business and technology that may have been holding them back previously. So I think there's some real optimism with this.
And Steve, what are you seeing from a banking perspective, I guess, people doing with these better returns?
Everything. Basically, everything from exiting the industry, taking advantage of the increased interest in, particularly the pastoral operations up north, and where there's massive interest, and some of the prices being paid, people are looking at it going, okay, let's take advantage of this time and look to maybe reinvest somewhere else. We're seeing people expand, take advantage of those opportunities of people exiting and expanding their own operations as well. There's investment in technology, there's investment in efficiencies on farm. FMDs were big last year, so we've got people squirreling away money for the bad times. We've seen some debt pay down, but more in the seasonal funding and working capital rather than the term. They're actually keeping that with rates where they are. People are seeing that as not as a really high priority at this point, but they are looking to use funds elsewhere to improve their operational efficiencies.
And that's good. And Bruce, what are you seeing really in that pastoral area? I mean, a B-double or a road train of cattle are worth a lot more than they were a couple of years ago.
They're not worth the old $50,000 mark that they worked on. It's closer to $100,000, whether it be lambs or cattle. But improvements going in, water systems, pipelines to help get over tough times, upgrading fencing to make it easier for mustering in the future with staff shortages. But in saying that, most places I've been to, you're seeing a few more young people on the books getting paid, which is really good. And there's two small communities where two major feedlotting companies would be employing 10 or 12, 15 staff in local country areas, which is good for the industry. And Australia needs a healthy, vibrant pastoral industry or rural production. So no, it's great to see, isn't it? And I guess following on from that question, you've talked about technology and people investing in technology. I mean, what do you see as the most important technology that's currently available to the beef sector and the beef industry? We might start with Bruce. Back to me. A couple of things, and I'd perhaps come back to simple water technology. I was at a property the other day where all the old windmills are gone and it's now all solar, and that technology to bring the ease of water, to spread it out, reliability, is improving production, improving cost efficiencies for down the track, and also water usage. People can monitor how much mains water is coming in through tank number A, B, C, and they can, if there's a leak, they can be more efficient, save money, that sort of stuff. And the other thing is the electronic media. If you want to market your stock, the advances that's happening in that side
sort
of
of
business.
Auctions Plus and those sort of
Auctions
things.
Plus, the way people put their stock on any electronic media, you can market your stock to the world if you want to, and it's bringing in new buyers all the time. So that's just progressing very, very fast. I don't know how Steve and Penny see it. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, Penny, do you sort of agree with that?
Absolutely. And also, as a beef producer and a stud breeder, I find the prospect of DEXA very exciting. Having this technology that can more accurately and objectively measure what we produce as beef producers, and then hopefully a value-based payment system where you truly get paid for the quality and quantity of beef that you produce. That's something that's pretty exciting for our business and something to look forward to.
Yeah, yeah.
the developments in just how they're going to age stock is going to be big once they get it on board, rather than dentition, will be a huge benefit to the industry.
Yeah, it's really going to change things and be able to provide producers and other people in the supply chain really good information and feedback rather than the guesstimates that we currently have. So
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Steve, as well?
Yeah, incredibly so. It's interesting that these efficiencies will flow, hopefully, right through the supply chain, and the feedback will be much stronger, much better. I mean, genetics are playing a much bigger part now, and they're improving it all the time. Bruce touched on the operational efficiencies on farm, even the use of drones in some of these pastoral areas. Once they become more efficient, you can do your water run, and not muster with them, get a good insight. Everything that can cut back this cost price squeeze is going to help. I guess the limitation in all this is our ability to access internet and communications.
Yeah,
and
so connectivity.
But also the traceability through the supply chain. I think some of the technology we're going to use to do that, and the technology we can then use to brand and market our product overseas, scanning barcodes and having a picture of some nice Alice Springs, southeast country.
Yeah.
Southeast country would be great.
Yeah. No, that's great. I guess this is an interesting question. It's long been said, I guess, that the cost of processing cattle in Australia is much higher than the rest of the world. And I mean, how do you think Australian beef can continue to compete? Like when we're talking very high processing costs, and we're talking, even I guess some of our input costs are a lot higher than some of our competitors, like Brazil and those South American countries. I mean, how does Australian beef sort of stay where it is and as competitive as it is in the world market? We might start with Steve. Can kick that off.
Okay. Oh, it's easy. Yeah. No, I mean, Australia will never be the cheapest processor of meat in the world. I mean, we've just got to accept that.
Yeah.
We can improve efficiencies through the supply chain. There's no doubt there's some gains we can make, but we'll never be the cheapest. So if we lay that on the table, where we will get some competitive advantages, how we differentiate our product in the global market, how we brand ourselves, how we can build on new markets, how we can build on existing markets, and provide a consistency of product. But it's also about helping the next generation of meat eaters understand the benefits of beef more widely. And we're competitive with things like poultry, pork. So I think one of the challenges for us is to build that market and build the next generation of meat eaters as well.
Yeah, that's it. And Penny, how do you?
Yeah, well, I guess that high processing costs actually has a fair bit to do with wage costs, which we can't reduce. They can only go one way, and it's generally not down. So you've got to look at efficiencies, as Steve mentioned, and also there's automation in the processing line, which they are working on. So there's those opportunities, and just I guess not lose sight of how good our Aussie beef is. I mean, domestically we're probably pretty much aware of that. And even in the global market, we have a fantastic reputation. And because we're never going to be the cheapest, we just have to make sure that Aussie beef isn't just beef, like the new campaign that's come out. It's not just beef, it's Australian beef, and that's the way we really need to push
market it.
Yep. It's not just a commodity.
Yeah. And Bruce, do you agree with that, I suppose?
A difficult question, that one, Catherine, but on the processing side. But I think, without being shot down, processors are doing a lot themselves to target specific markets, and we all have to catch up with what processors want to meet those markets, whether it be part of a beast or the whole animal. So they're doing their own thing, and just from Bruce Cameron's perspective, let's hope we don't become too regulative as an Australian and shoot ourselves in the foot, whether it be live export or processing, that we don't make it so hard because we've got a clean green product. It is already. How clean and green do you make it? And so let's hope the regulators make it simpler for our processors to keep selling our product.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure that red tape doesn't make it too hard. So
Yes.
no, that's great. And I guess finally, if you can just give us your long-term outlook on where you see beef prices. It's great to see your positivity and I guess the optimism that's in the industry at the moment. I mean, how do you see prices for the next sort of couple of years? I suppose we might start. Bruce, over to you first.
I'll just bring out the crystal ball.
Yep.
However you expected that. Look, I wrote when we talked about that before. I just wrote down the word weather, and we are in a country where all of a sudden, like this time last year, New South Wales or wherever it was good seasonal conditions, and everyone was buying everything. It turns around, a spate of cold weather the last 3 or 4 weeks. Western Queensland a bit drier. It has all flow-on effects to all parts of Australia. Down in Penny's country, if there's a few more stock up north, they filter into northern New South Wales. So it's a question that we are subjected to the weather conditions in Australia is a big thing in my part of it. But I don't think we're going to jump back to where it was 3 or 4 years ago. It's going to be a healthy plateau, and a lot of people want it at a reasonable level rather than going to organic prices going through the roof and then it drops down. So quietly confident that it's going to hold at a healthy level rather than drop away to some figures we've seen. But weather is a big thing.
Yeah.
I know that's an old cliche, but that's a big part of it.
Yeah, and it is so unpredictable, isn't it? So
Like the last week, we had a bit of rain here in the Adelaide Hills. All of a sudden, the phone rings a bit. It changed 2 weeks ago. We've had 2 weeks of cold weather. No one wanted to talk about buying any store stock. So weather, it just changes our demand and pricing pretty quickly.
absolutely. And Penny, do you agree? I guess producers are always looking to the skies to see what's happening.
Yeah, we're so dependent on it, and although Australia exports a lot of beef, like a significant portion of our beef goes offshore, we're still at the perils of what happens domestically, whether people are wanting to build herds, reduce numbers, whether it's a drought over here and it's raining over there. It's so volatile. But as Bruce said, like there's a new line drawn in the sand of where prices are going to plateau. And I certainly don't want to see beef prices go back to what they were a few years ago, because they were at the same price they were 25 years ago. And I'm pretty sure we're not going to get back there. So I can only see a positive.
Yeah, great. And Steve, you're pretty bullish?
We're bullish, optimistic, I guess, that we're not going to see the falls, as both Bruce and Penny have talked about. And I think underpinning that in Australia at the moment is the supply of cattle. I don't see that having any major impact in the short term, because it's going to take a while for our herd to rebuild itself. So there's going to be a lot of investment back into the herd. I think probably one word, Bruce talked about weather, I'm going to talk about volatility. And volatility comes about by climate, by weather, but also comes about by geopolitical movements globally, by biosecurity issues and currency. All those sort of things are going to play a part in what happens. But I think even though we'll be a bit more volatile, and that's going to be part of the game from here on in, we'll still see a reasonably strong price for producers.
Yep. No, that's great. Look, well, thanks very much for your time, Bruce, Penny and Steve. I think hopefully we've touched on some great points there, and like you've all said, let's hope the rain continues and we continue to be able to market our beef really well around the world. Thanks for your time.